Hi, my name is Eric from VIPKid. Today, I talked to Teacher Ellen and Teacher Nellie about Level 2, Unit 4, Lesson 9. We covered all these fantastic things that could help you in the classroom. Things like the importance of TPR, the importance of a reward system, how to manage your pacing, and all these other fantastic things that could help you. If this is your first time teaching the class and you want a little bit of guidance, or if this is your 100th time teaching the class and you want to learn some new things, then you should definitely watch this video. If you're ready, let's get started.
So my name's Nellie. I've been with VIPKid for just about 2 years. Absolutely love it. And I'm also a mock class mentor since last summer. So, I'm from Colorado also. Love Colorado. We got snow today.
My name's Ellen. I'm originally from Iowa, but I'm living right now in Spain studying international education, pursuing my master's degree here, and I've been with VIPKid since July of 2016, so a year and a half about. I'm also a mock class mentor.
Ask the student their name, ask how they're doing. It kind of depends too if it's a repeat student. Might ask a few, more personal questions, or at their level for the student too. I can kind of judge how they're responding to those first couple questions. I might ask what they did today, or even maybe a little something simpler. How old are you, or how are you, something like that. And then of course, introduce what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it depends. If it's a new student, I always go through, hello, how are you? How old are you? If it's one of the students that I've had before or in previous levels, then I would go into more difficult questions, maybe, or something that I know is of their ability.
Right, exactly.
And I try to introduce the lesson as well, even though for the younger students, some of them like to repeat. So if they've had this lesson before, they can overall get a general consensus of, this is what we're going to do today.
Definitely.
How would you explain the prior knowledge of the student? So if I were to teach this class, what could I assume the student knows and is capable of and is not capable of?
I would say for this lesson, very simple sentence patterns, like this is a big one at this one. Very simple blending, some question and answer, but really making sure that you're sticking with those target sentences.
Yeah, definitely here I would make sure to go into the student info section, and this might be a student that just started with us 9 classes ago.
Right.
So if that's the case, then you definitely want to be aware of incidental language. And that just kind of goes by trial and error. If you ask something and they're not understanding, or they're not saying it in a full, complete sentence, then you can obviously work through that and adjust your level to the student. It's completely based on your student level.
Yep.
Perfect. Reward system. I will say I honestly never really use this reward system. I usually have my own, and something age appropriate, obviously, like ice cream. A lot of the students like at this level anything fun. And like I said, depends on my student. Again, if I've had them previously, know they like something, I would probably use that.
Absolutely. I do the same thing. I don't usually use the reward system provided. Like right now I have a little magnetic thing. Some of them have little fun things in them. Some of them have stars. So then if they find the star, they get a star. They love that. All of them love and like to compete, or sometimes they'll do like a memory one or something like that with it too. And they really enjoy that. But I think having to go back to that slide is difficult to manage. And so it takes a lot of time flipping back. Even if you do go to the exact slide, flipping back and forth is kind of tricky. I think at this level, kind of explaining this is kind of difficult also in words that the student would understand.
When I first started, I had all of the reward systems printed off, and so I never even went back to the slide, and it was still complicated. I would probably just completely leave off the teacher side because they didn't get like, oh, I'm doing a great job. I'll move myself up. So I usually just stuck to the student part of it anyway, when I did use this.
I think having to go back to that slide is difficult to manage, and so it takes a lot of time flipping back. Even if you do go to the exact slide, flipping back and forth is kind of tricky. I think at this level, kind of explaining this is kind of difficult also in words that the student would understand.
When I first started, I had all of the reward systems printed off, and so I never even went back to the slide, and it was still complicated. I would probably just completely leave off the teacher side because they didn't get like, oh, I'm doing a great job. Right. I'll move myself up. So I usually just stuck to the student part of it anyway, when I did use this. Because there's a lot of language. First of all, I taught my cat the very first 4 words. There's on the past tense that some of my upper level don't even remember. Right. But so here I just use lots and lots of props and TPR. Usually I try to have some like cleaning products. That's what I brought with me today, like to clean my room. And with that, like doing a cat sound, any kind of TPR that you can get your student to follow with you.
Yeah. I think that's what I would do on a slide like this too. A lot of movement. It's kind of hard, I think, to get too many props going here. If you wanted to, the bucket, brush, broom, clock, you would be constantly bringing out a lot of things. So I do a lot of the TPR on a slide like this, and maybe like pick up some toys at the end, but really go line by line. And also the lines on this one, I think, are even a little bit long. There's quite a few words. So if a student is kind of struggling after that first one, I might break it up a little bit more too for them.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say that too. Like I would start with, I taught my cat, have them repeat, and then to clean my room.
Yes.
And repeat as well.
Yes.
Because a lot of these words would not be in their prior knowledge.
No.
You're really, as much as we try not to get our students to pair it, and we want them to read independently, this one is a little bit difficult for them to take charge of.
Definitely.
How many props do you think you would use for this slide? I mean, there's so many different things going on that it's kind of hard to get them. And you just can't get them to understand everything.
No. I would try to separate it out. Like I had a cat, and then I was thinking like I would show the cat, and then even like on the last one, maybe pick up a couple of different toys and show them a couple of toys. And with the cleaning stuff, do a little bit of TPR or something kind of. I like to do a balance of both things too. I think if you have too many props, it just gets overwhelming, and you're trying to pull things up the whole time, and you're focusing on that. So kind of maybe just 1 or 2 props, and then use some TPR for the other things.
Okay. Yeah, I would say with good TPR, you don't need over 2 or 3 props.
Yeah.
Okay. And can we see your TPR? Like just one of you or both of you, if you could just kind of show like the TPR that you would use to teach this class.
So I would do I always do like some kind of cleaning motion with that, pick up, something like that.
Yeah, definitely with picture frames. I always try to make the frame, even with like a broom, you can pretend you're sweeping across.
Yes.
And the kids like to do that too.
They do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, here I just know that, okay, so this is the 9th lesson. So they've seen these op words before, and some of my students will jump right on op, cop, hop, fop. Yes. And so then you don't want it to be just, even though they know, you might have them break them up. Like you still want to hear the 2 sounds here. We still need to make sure that they know the C sound, the H sound, and the F sound alone. So I always use with these my magnetic letters. So I start out with the op. I don't know, can you see this backwards?
No, it looks good to me.
Okay, good. So like I would have a k, op, cop, and then op, hop, and have the student go through in that way.
Absolutely, Ellen. I do the same thing. I have I have this little whiteboard, and I'll do the op on there, and I just move up so they can see that ending stay the same, but we're just changing out that initial sound. Some of my students that are a little more, need to move a little bit more, I might do some hand movements, that kind of thing with them, and put those together. And again, like you said, they have been exposed to this quite a few times, so a lot of them will just rush through it. So I like to make a game of it too. I'll do it really fast with them or really slow, those kinds of things too. They enjoy
definitely.
that. Yeah.
And the next one is really just reiterating the fact, and it's just making sure that they know the sounds and the blends in a fun way. So a lot of the times with this, again, what Nellie said, I would probably make it into a game. Sometimes we whisper it and, you know, I say it as quiet as I can. And then they even come up to the camera and do their own TBR. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And they'll wait for it, and then they draw the line, obviously, and then sometimes we switch. They're the teacher, and then I draw the line.
I wouldn't be too concerned about drawing a line. The students are, at this point, should be fine with that. But if they need some help understanding, you know, using your finger, showing your mouse. A lot of times they're on the iPad, so I'll show my phone. Those kinds of things too for that. But it's not usually a problem on this one.
Okay.
I always bring Maya to class with me so that I can actually say hi to her or circle on the screen, or you can have them circle, say, oh, hello, Maya, circle Maya. And I try to front load the vocabulary in here. So you would maybe the house and circle the house. I always try to be very obvious as to what we're trying to look at on the screen. So it's easy. Then to extend, you can ask if it's a small house or a big house. And those are prior, as we were talking about prior knowledge, that's prior knowledge the student would probably know, especially with TPR, the big and the small. And back in one of my old classes as well that I was watching, the student knew home, and she kept saying, my home. I said, oh, great. So that's one of the places in this level I would use the chat box with this level and just put like house equals home in the chat box, and she seemed to understand it at that level. And so usually I don't use the chat box as a reinforcer in this level, but sometimes it is effective when it's simple.
Okay, this one, so just introducing bed and having the student repeat that a few times. I have a little bed. I like to pretend I'm sleeping. They love that. Snoring, those kinds of things. Yep, shoes, you know, you smell the stinky shoe. They love that one. And then really just even having the student, you know, I like to ask a question, what is this, after you've introduced it, and circling the object and having them read that sentence pattern.
I think the most difficult part on this slide is in the teacher directions, like is there a bed in your room? I try and ask that, and sometimes my students do know. A lot of the times I have the luck that they're in their room while they're taking this lesson, so I can like look around for in their room. And I say, oh, I see your bed, and then we can use that as like a starting point. Is there a bed in your room? Yes, there is. Like, I can see it.
And I think getting them to do that is the hard part, and kind of wording it in the right way. Like this, I like you said, is a little tricky. Is there a bed in your room? I might say, do you see a bed? If you're struggling with that. And making that connection, I think, is so nice for the students, because they get excited to show you. Those moving their iPad around, showing your room, and making those connections is so good. And I think that really reinforces the vocabulary.
Yeah, just watch out for motion sickness here.
Right.
And do you ever feel like, depending on whatever device the student is using, if it's a computer, with an iPad, it's a little bit more obvious because you have that kind of like really awkward camera angle. So do you do that no matter what device they're using to try to get them?
I try to notice, because a lot of the times they'll have an external camera, and they're very aware of that, because they're usually right up in it for a good amount of the class. Part two, I always ask them to show me their shoes, and I show them mine too. They think it's hilarious.
Yes. Definitely. Or what color are your shoes if they don't have them? I do that one sometimes.
So you just pull up your shoe.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
Screen,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that this word is a little bit tricky to get them to pronounce correctly. So,
wardrobe.
How would you do it?
I start out trying to do it in the two parts, just like we would blending, like wardrobe. What I noticed with some of them, it was the long O sound that was hard at the end. So I really accentuated that word. So drobe, and you have fun with that, and then you break it up, wardrobe. One way you can do that is by sometimes writing on, I'll write it here. So I have wardrobe, and then, but I'll like hide half of the word and then come back out. And so we'll start small and then go to the whole word, and that usually helps them. So you might have to spend a little bit of extra time on it.
Definitely.
Okay.
But I always seem that the parents, even if I feel like I'm spending too long of time on just something as easy as the pronunciation or simple, the parents usually do appreciate that. And later even say in feedback, thanks for paying such close attention to the pronunciation, like that's really important to us. So I think it's definitely worth the extra time.
Definitely. Especially like a word like this, because it is such a big part of this unit. I mean, it comes up in every single lesson, and that's very important. And I really do see that the parents really do appreciate that extra emphasis. It's very important to them that the students are speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And this is something really common too that they always usually have in their room. So it's another connection that you can make.
Definitely.
Would you say that this is an easy slide to finish under 1 minute, or is it one of the more difficult ones?
I would spend probably a little bit over a minute, because with the wardrobe, with the extension, obviously saying the text that's on the slide, but then there's a lot of connections you can make as well. With the wardrobe, with the toys, they usually always have toys to show you, and they are excited about those toys. So
Definitely.
just let them show them off. You know, it's fun.
Yes.
And this is one too where I would probably spend a little bit of extra wardrobe and mirror, having them pronounce those.
How would a student normally say mirror? Like, what do you think are the big sound of pronunciation difficulties that they have with this word?
The second syllable, like the mirror, the r part at the end is where usually they have difficult saying it.
So Nellie, would you have any tips or tricks on how they can get them to better replicate that sound?
Right. Having the student see your mouth and the sound that you're making with it, so maybe even moving closer to your camera so they can see that a little bit better, and seeing how you're changing that. Even breaking it up a little bit, saying it slower.
This one is always, I would say, one of the faster ones, bearing that they have the words and they can say them correctly, because they've done, chances are, the like listen and match before, or what is this, and they know this is my, these are. So in this one, there's not even any that are these are. So it's usually pretty straightforward.
Right, right. Yeah, I usually will just circle the object and I'll ask them, what is this? And so that they're using that target sentence and checking to make sure that they are aware of the vocabulary.
Yeah, and one thing I would say here is probably the most common error, or not error, but they will say the one word, and then you want to you want to have them say that full sentence. So this is my mirror.
Right.
And make sure to get the full sentences from the students, elicit the full responses.
Definitely.
How do you do
So
this
one? I this one's kind of an odd one, I think, too, to stretch that out. And I always feel like I'm saying it kind of weird. So just saying the words really slow for the student, even maybe changing it up and doing it fast on the next one, something like that. But again, I think that making sure they're practicing that target and the vocabulary, that's your goal for the slide, and just doing it in a fun way.
I would say I never explain how it says in the teacher directions, really there, using snail talk. I have never ever used that or said that to my student. I kind of just do the listen and circle and then go from there. The directions need to be pretty simple, black and white and direct.
Definitely. I think if you start adding too much in there, it gets confusing, and that's when you might have some problems of them understanding what it is you really want them to do. So I kind of just jump into it and go for it. See how.
Can you elaborate on what they shouldn't be doing? Like you said, you try to avoid the snail talk. So what would be, what are the flaws with approaching it that way?
I don't avoid the snail talk. I still do like say it really, really slowly, but I just don't use that as my directions for the student.
Okay.
Because one of the most common errors here is that they might repeat the question. Is there a bed in your room? Is there a bed in your room? And you could go a few times with that. So it's better to have, I think, to be visual. So I always have my Dinah and my Maya talking. And then sometimes if I can say, I am Dino, you are Maya. And then when you ask them the question, you can even circle their dialogue to make sure that they're following and it's a little bit easier for them.
Yes, I do the same thing. And I'll usually go through whatever the section, I think this one has 2 or 3 slides of this. I'll go through all 3 of them, and then I'll go back if we have time, and we'll switch places so that they're having that chance to practice asking the question as well as answering the question. I always think that's fun. Another way, at this level, I can start to have a little bit of fun too, and I'll answer incorrectly. So if it's a bed, I might say they all know pizza. So I'll say pizza or ice cream or something like that. And that makes it really fun. The students love it. They love to correct me. And it just makes everything a lot of fun and enjoyable. So that's something I always like to do. But I think this is kind of at that point with most of the students that you can kind of start doing that. So it's
whatever we've covered, what props would you say we would need so far? So we need the Maya. Usually you have a whiteboard with letters.
Dino.
And a Dino. Is there anything else?
I found these great little props at IKEA. And that has a wardrobe, which is awesome. So I have that one.
That is a legit wardrobe.
Yes. It came with a wardrobe, a bed, a table, and a chair, which are perfect for this unit. So I love to use those.
I've made some real connections with IKEA and my students too, because they go to IKEA with their families a lot. Apparently.
Funny. Books. I have books for that one. Shoes. I mean, it's just the great thing is just stuff that's just around my house that I just grab, you know? Besides
I suppose that's the nature of the class, right? Things around your house.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say the basics that I use almost every class, though, are like my characters for dialogue. Those are pretty universal. I use those almost every class. My letters, either letter cards or the magnetic letters, almost every class with this level. My whiteboard,
every
again,
class.
pretty, those are like must-haves.
Yeah.
This is pretty similar, like 12, 13, and 14, all I do in a very similar way, make sure they're checking the vocabulary, and like Nellie said, if we have extra time, I'll go back and have them be Dino. Dino's famous, so they love to be him.
Definitely.
I don't know. Letter cards, and I might circle for the student like this is while I'm showing an A, and I'll circle like the B while I say these are. And here again I might say it wrong or incorrectly, so I might say these are a table. No, teacher. And then correct me. And so that's a great way to check comprehension at this level while entertaining.
You sit. This one we're getting into where I think it's getting close to sit and on the next slide, so I'll ask, do you sit on a table?
Okay, well, let's move on to slide 17 then.
And kind of in the same way, I would probably, you model which one they're to circle, like an A or a B, not which one for them, but to get the point of the activity. And then if they're not understanding it, then you can say it incorrectly, or you can count the wardrobes first, and that might help them understand these are.
Okay.
I don't know about you, Ellen, but I don't find that they struggle too much with this as these are. I think it's because of the counting in it, just being numbers are very easy. My students usually do pretty well with it.
Yeah, definitely. In the isolation, like isolated grammar activities, they're usually very, they understand it. It's more like speaking when they're naturally speaking and not thinking of it. Then it's just a quick fix as well, though.
So at this point, we're really rolling in the class. You know, the key language, and it's all now they're able to utilize it on their own.
Absolutely,
definitely. In the 9th lesson, when they've seen this,
the movements are kind of tricky. This is, these are getting them to understand that, I think, without using a lot of language. But as far as using those words, should be pretty good. And then I would use, I've hold up some props too and use the books or that to help with that. Make sure they're understanding there's more than one.
As well as the actions on this one, I might have them draw a line too,
yes,
to like this is or these
yes.
are. And that seems to clear things up a little bit better. I always try to do, like I have my rabbit ears for this is, or these are. So I try to get that, but sometimes that part is more difficult than the activity itself. And if I know that I want to extend later, I'll have them draw lines to the correct.
Yeah. I would probably do that more, especially if the motions are a little trickier for the student they're not getting it. I wouldn't spend too much time on that because that's not really the important thing. The important thing is that they're making that sentence and saying those and making that match. So I will stick with the drawing line, absolutely.
Okay. I always try it first because you never know. They could catch on and that could be their favorite activity.
Right.
So I always try it, but like you said, Nellie, I won't spend an overwhelming amount of time on it if they're not understanding it.
Yes. Okay, so this one you're introducing down. So I would start with that one. The sight words, I have cards I have them on index cards for all the different lessons. And so I have them tabbed and I like to hold them up so they can see them, or I'll circle on the screen also. And then I'll go through all of them with them. If there's a couple they might be struggling with that are a little trickier, they're not remembering those, I might go back and forth. I like to make a little game out of it and go faster, or do the same one over and over, back and forth, and make it fun, have them go fast. It makes it entertaining instead of just repeating, because that can get really boring after a lesson. So just trying to do it, I think, in a fun way.
I also try to incorporate some TPR as well. Like if I don't have them written out, like all of the not, little, down, there's lots of opportunities for TPR. Can,
definitely.
I'm not really sure yet. Still working on that.
How would you do TPR for can?
I say it quietly and then make it fun that way. I don't.
Yeah.
I haven't nailed that one yet.
No. I don't know that one.
Okay.
Just because there are so many actions you can do with it. Like I said, I have my chair, so I'll bring out, and you can put a little person on the chair. I sit down, or I sit down in my chair, and we'll talk about our chairs and what color they are and what they look like. And then fall down. Usually, my person will fall out of her chair, so she falls down. So that's kind of how I show that one.
Yeah, I always have
out of
my
chair
students fall down too. Yeah, they love watching teacher fall.
Yep.
And the next one is there's a lot of these are this is activities in here, as you can see. So just try to do something a little bit different so there's some variety with each.
And at this point, that is because there's so many of them. This is when I would probably use something else besides the screen. So I'll hold up like pins and I'll ask them, this is or these are, and then go to something different. Hold up my table or something, just to if they're getting it and it's going good, try something different just to keep them entertained and focused on the lesson and in that way.
Yeah, you can also have them find things in their house to use too. They always have lots and lots of their own props.
Yes.
If they don't bring them to class to show you, they're always around. So and they know, like if you pretend you're looking for something that they have on their side of the screen, they usually catch on to that pretty quickly. Have my students draw lines again, like this time 3 lines, because we'd go from this is to the mirror to the picture of the mirror. And just saying those sentences again. Again, this is another place for extension, especially if they have the vocabulary words nailed already and they're pronouncing them correctly. Like that's, it's just a really quick slide. So you can extend here.
Yes.
How would you teach this are you both accomplished singers? Any published works?
Wonderful singer. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No, No.
Okay.
I usually start it for my student and then see if they know it. And if they do, then I just slowly fade out.
I
So-
just let them hear my wonderful voice. No, I'm a terrible singer, but I love to sing with them, so I'll sing along.
Okay.
I don't care.
Okay. And if they've never heard it before, if they don't know the beat, I mean, do you just get it started and they pick up? How would you walk me through in detail? how you
I
go through
usually
the
do
slide?
line for line, just like the warm up, and bring in some TPR.
Mhm.
These lines are fairly simple, so I would just do one and have them repeat after me.
Mhm.
For merrily, I always clap out the syllables
Yes.
because that word is a little bit difficult. So I would just do one, and then we would start with the beat, like merrily. And then also life is but a dream. I always usually break that line into two as well.
Yeah.
It's a little bit complicated. I think it's with the beat.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it goes a little bit faster. So
Yeah.
they usually miss one of the words.
Words in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With
And-
TPR, of course.
Absolutely.
Row your boat.
Yep. Rowing.
And then
Go, and you can go
carry on.
faster and slower.
Let's see all the TPR. Row your boat.
Row your boat gently down the street.
Row your boat. Yes. And I always have a microphone too. If it's like time to sing, then they understand that.
Sing
Yeah. The goodbye song. For merrily, like I said, I just clap out the syllables.
Or you give them. I always give my last star on the goodbye slide also. So you got 5 stars. We do high fives. Tell them that they did a great job today, and that usually I'll say I'll see you next time, and goodbye.
Yeah, same. I always try to space the stars out every 5 minutes. 25-minute class every 5 minutes. We're mathematicians. So the last star you give right at the end, and I always see that makes them not work for it. You don't want to say that, but they're looking forward to it at the end of the class.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're clocking out after 5 stars if you give it too early.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And then usually if they've told me something at the beginning of class, I try to reconnect that. If I said, what did you do today? And they say homework, I say, good luck with your homework.
Right.
Pretend you're crying or something.
Yeah.
Or just try to make a personal connection with them. A lot of my students now, I see them a few times a week. So sometimes their family comes in. You say hi quickly to their family. I always think that's nice. The moms love to come in and say hi to you. And
Definitely.
you work a lot with their children, so it's cool because you have these connections with the families.
Yep. And even asking what are you going to do now? If that class is over, I ask that one a lot too. What are you going to do now?
So if we were to recap from the entire lesson, which slide would you say would be the most difficult, and which slide offers the most opportunity for extension?
Most difficult, I would say probably the vocabulary, like we discussed with wardrobe and mirror. I think would be the most challenging for the students.
Yeah, that's definitely the most common error, or the words that I have to work more with.
Yeah.
Because the other vocabulary is pretty straightforward and shorter, like bed.
Yes.
Not a lot of my students have problems with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Books.
Yeah.
As well. So I would agree with Nellie that wardrobe and mirror, at least as far as how much time is spent. Like I said before, I think that sometimes you feel like you're spending too much time on that because it's longer than other slides, but it's really worth it. And like I said, I feel like the parents do appreciate that. They almost always say that in feedback later, thank you for working with them.
Yeah. And I think that's where pacing comes in really helpful here too, because if you're going to spend a little bit more time probably on that section, and there is a lot of those these are slides, you can kind of get through those a little bit quicker to give you that time for those, for the wardrobe and mirror slides.
Yeah, definitely. If there's a lot of repeat lessons or repeat activities later in the lesson, you're not going to have to explain all of those. Those are going to go pretty quickly.
Yes, definitely.
like the slide 21 and 22, the matching, this is, these are, because we said before, like there have been a lot of these activities already. And so here there's a lot of opportunity for the students to grab things around their house, or for you to bring in other props, like Nellie said before.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that's probably at the point where you might have a little bit of extra time, or if the student was struggling, you might need to get there a little bit faster, but I would say you'd probably have a little more time to do that there.
Okay. And when let's say, for example, you were teaching this class for the first time, how much preparation time do you think you would need?
The first time that we gave the class, did you ask?
Yes, the first time.
I would say at least 15 minutes to just go through and make sure that you have all of your props. I like to bring things in as a general rule for props. I like to bring things that aren't already on the slide, because that I can usually circle and things like that. But like with the characters, being able to show them at the time that they're speaking, whiteboard, a microphone to know that it's time to sing, all of those like nonverbal cues that you give the student really help the flow of the class.
Definitely. I would say
just to make sure you have those.
I would agree with 15 minutes. Now I would say between about 5 minutes, just because I am so used to teaching. I've taught this unit a lot of times, and I kind of know what I need, and I have all my things in my little section there. So, but I still, every day I still go through, after my classes, go through all my lessons, make sure I have everything I need, what blends they're working on, what sight words we're going to see, and then review those sentence patterns and those things too.
Okay, great.
Yeah, here it's where it's really, really convenient too to have the VIPKid app on your phone. I use it every single night just to look through. It's very, very easy. Say, okay, this is what I'm going to need for tomorrow. And just to give yourself a refresher, even though we do give this unit all the time, I'm not going to remember every single slide. And so I'll never go into a class blind. I guess I always want to review it just to make sure, oh yeah, like I used that prop last time. It was really helpful.
Yes, definitely. Or think about the ways that you can extend. I think to have that in mind before is always nice too.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ellen and Nellie. I feel like I learned so much from you during this conversation. Well, viewers, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, if you were entertained, that's awesome. High five. If you want to catch more awesome content from us, then check out the next episode of Oh Snap.